chapter 12 today. If there's a man in Scripture that teaches us to go beyond what we could ask or think or imagine, it's a man named Abraham. Abraham, just to give you a quick backstory, Abraham was childless all the way until he was 99 years of age. Abraham just wanted a child. God, I just want a child. His wife was barren. They had no children. And God said, I don't want to just give you a child. I want to make you the father of many nations. That's beyond, church. Oh, God, I have a vision for my life, and my vision is just to have a child. God says, no. That's not my best for you. I want to take you beyond having a child to making you a father of many nations. And we pick up his story in verse 1 of Genesis chapter 12. And the Lord said to Abram, Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I'm not going to show you it yet, but I want you to go to a place that I'm going to show you in the future. We'll get there in a minute. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. All the peoples on the earth will be blessed through you. Do you hear what God's saying to Abraham? Do you hear what God's trying to do to Abraham's vision and his perspective and his desires? God, when his interactions with Abraham out the gate was, I want to take you beyond what you could ever think or what you could ever ask or what you could ever imagine. Verse 4, so this is what Abraham did. He went as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him, who was his nephew. Abraham was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. There's a place that God's calling you to leave, that if you're faithful to go and refuse to settle, you will arrive there. I want to give you 3 decisions that Abraham made in this story that helped him move beyond where he was towards the promise that God had for his life. 3 decisions that you and I have to make if we're going to leave comfort, if we're going to leave what we've known, we're going to leave our place of luxury, we're going to leave our place of comfort. 3 decisions we have to make if we want to live in the beyond that God has for our lives. Here's the first decision that Abraham made, that we have to make. We have to make the decision to go. You got to make the decision, I'm not staying here any longer. I don't care how comfortable it is. I don't care how good it is. I don't care what I got around me. I don't care what I've accumulated. I refuse to stay in this place any longer. I got to go. Have you ever been in a place that you got to go from? That God's stirring in your heart, God's stirring in your life, and you've heard Him say, go. And what your response is to be what Abraham's response was. The Bible says Abraham went. He said, I'm going to go. I think Abraham had the revelation that if I stay where I am, then where I am is where I'm always going to be, and this isn't where God's called me to be, so I got to go. Far too often in our lives, guys, we settle in a place. This is comfortable, and this is nice, and this is sweet, and this is pleasant, and it's not hard, and we can do that financially. We can do that in our relationships. I think more marriages fail because you get in a comfortable place and you quit trying to go to a new place. I think churches and businesses fail. They cease to grow and make an impact because they get to a place that's comfortable and they stop moving forward toward the thing that God has for their life. You need to hear me this morning. Comfort is the enemy to the destiny of God. And Abraham was like, if I stay here, then if I stay in Haran, this is where I'm going to be. But this isn't all God's called me to be. This isn't the place that He's called me to go. And if I stay here, I'm going to miss out on something significant. And so Abraham does something amazing. The Bible says that he packs up everything that he owns, all the possessions that he has accumulated. And he goes, not knowing where he's going. He don't even know. The Bible says God told him to go to a place I will show you. As a matter of fact, if this is Jeremy's interpretation of this story, I think Abraham packed up everything that he had and he just started walking. Believing all the while that God was going to direct him as long as he kept walking. And I believe Abraham and God were having a conversation, and Abraham was saying, God, is it that way or is it that way? Should I head towards that mountain? Should I head towards that valley? Which way should I go? Until he came to the place of promise. Just in case you're wondering, it was a 500-mile walk. Here's what you need to understand if you're going to go beyond. Faith can't just be a decision you make. It has to be a walk you take. Faith requires movement. I believe that God doesn't show us until we show Him we're moving. Abraham went. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8, speaking about Abraham's faith, it says that by faith, Abraham, when called to go to the place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he didn't know where he was going. Far too often, guys, we wait to move until we got it all figured out, and we wonder why we never move. When the reality is, if you're waiting to move until you got it all figured out, you never move. God's calling you to go. And maybe you're waiting to get your I's dotted and your T's crossed and everything figured out in the plan systematically. I can be that way, just to be quite honest with you. But I'm learning in my faith journey, I can't wait to get it figured out. I just got to go. I got to demonstrate my faith in God by saying, God, you've called me to go, and I'm going to start walking. And I believe that if I start walking, you'll show me where to go when I need to know where to go. This is the first decision that Abraham made. And it's a decision that we have to make if we want to go beyond towards the destiny of God for our lives. Here's the second decision that Abraham made that we have to make. We have to make the decision to leave behind what we have for the promise of something better. We have to make the decision to leave behind what we have for the promise of something better. See, God calls Abraham to go. Some translations say leave. That God said, you need to leave your country, your people, and your father's house. Listen, you need to know this morning, if you're going to go, it's going to require you to leave something behind. And God told Abraham specifically, you need to leave your country, you need to leave your people, and you need to leave your father's house. Really, we kind of can miss that. We kind of get that, but we can miss the significance of what God is calling Abraham to leave behind in the hopes of receiving something better. Abraham was the oldest son of his father, Terah. And when his father, Terah, died in Haran, Abraham stood to inherit the estate. And his father was a very wealthy man. And so literally what God is calling Abraham to leave behind is the wealth and the inheritance that he stood to gain. If you're going to go beyond, you need to know it's always going to cost you something. There is always a sacrifice involved in pursuing God's best for your life. God says, I need you to leave what you stand to gain behind because I have a promise of something better in your future. And the better that God had in store for Abraham was Canaan. He said, I want you to go to Canaan. Well, what does that mean? What does Canaan represent? Canaan always in the Bible represents God's promises. It always represents the promised land, the place of God's blessing. It represents God's best for our lives. God was telling Abraham, I've got something incredible for you, but you're going to have to leave this in order to get that. And if you're unwilling to leave this, you're never going to get that. But if you are willing to leave this, then you stand to inherit something that is exceedingly and abundantly beyond what you just made the choice to leave. I have found in my life that there is no forward movement without sacrifice. Progression always requires sacrifice. But God, in His wisdom, doesn't ask us to sacrifice just for the sacrificial sake. He asks us to sacrifice for the promise of something better. Abraham, you stand to inherit something significant, but I have something better. And if you're willing to sacrifice what you stand to inherit today, then I've got a promise for you. I've got a land that is flowing with milk and honey, and it'll be a land that you will be connected with for all of eternity. And in this land, you're going to prosper. And in this land, you're going to be blessed. And I'm going to put a hedge around you. And wherever you go, you're going to be blessed. And whoever you bless is going to be blessed. And whoever you curse is going to be cursed. Abraham, I'm going to be your shield before you and your rear guard behind you. But you got to leave where you are. If you want to go beyond, you got to understand it always involves sacrifice. But God doesn't just call us to sacrifice for sacrifice's sake. He does it for the promise of something better. I remember a few years ago, God spoke to Meg and I to give a car away. And I said, say what? And God spoke very clearly to Meg and I both. Hey, you need to give a car away. You need to give a car away. And so we did. At Christmas time, we boxed up the deed to the car, the keys, put it in a little Christmas present, and then we presented it to the person at Christmas that we felt like God had called us to give the car to. And it was a beautiful moment. Now, let me give you the backside of that. So I didn't, when we gave that car away, I didn't have another car in waiting. So we literally made the decision, we're going to figure out how both of us are going to work full time and how we're going to take care of the kids and get them everywhere they need to be with one vehicle. Now I know that's a first world problem, but it's still a problem. And so we did. We gave it away without the idea of how we were going. And obviously to give it away meant it was paid for. And we didn't have means just to be quite honest, to go buy a new car. And so, but we felt like God had called us to do it. So we did it. After we did that, within the next 2 months, random people came up and just gave us money. And you know how much money they gave us? It wasn't what the car was worth. It was double what the car was worth. That enabled us then to go get a different car, a new car. I say that because I came to understand something in that moment in my life, and Meg began to understand that in this moment in our lives, that when God calls you to sacrifice something, it's always because He has something better on the other side that He wants to give you. But if you're unwilling to leave where you are, then where you are is where you're always going to be, and you're not going to be able to progress to the next thing that God has for you. You know, Jesus gave His life for us. Why? He left the comfort of not being beaten to a bloody pulp. Why did Jesus go through the tragedy of the cross? Because there was a promise on the other side of it that was bigger and better than the punishment that He had to walk through. Jesus said, I'm willing to sacrifice my body because humanity is going to be restored into right relationship with God if I'm willing to make this sacrifice. Do you hear what I'm saying this morning? Amen. If you want to go beyond where you are to the place that God's calling you to go, it's going to require you to leave something behind. My question to you this morning is, what's God asking you to leave behind? What's the thing that you're holding on to, that you've got your hand wrapped around, that you giving that thing up may be the key to unlocking your future? Abraham said, my inheritance isn't worth my destiny. I'm leaving it behind. Third decision that we have to make if we're going to move forward to the destiny of God for our lives, we have to make the decision to refuse to settle for where we are. We have to refuse to settle. I am declaring I'm not staying here anymore. I'm refusing to settle that this is all God has for me. This is all God's purposes are for my life. I refuse to settle in this place. I don't know if you know this or not, but the Bible indicates that Abraham wasn't the first one to receive the invitation to go to Canaan and be the father of many nations. It really indicates that Abraham wasn't the initial choice to become the father of our faith. It was Abraham's father, Terah. If you read the chapter before Genesis 11, you come to verse 31. At the very end of chapter 11, before the passage we just read about Abraham's invitation, it says, Terah, who was Abraham's father, took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, and the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to what? To Canaan. To Canaan. Terah was the one that initially received the invitation to go to Canaan, to go to the place of promise, to go to the place of blessing, to go to the destiny that I have for your life. I really believe the Bible is telling us, it's indicating that Terah was the first one to receive the invitation. And initially it indicates that he responded. That he left Ur of the Chaldeans and he moved on to Haran. This is the next part of Genesis 31. It says, but when they came to Haran, they settled there. Figuratively, literally, every way, he receives the word of the Lord. I'm to leave Ur of the Chaldeans and go to Canaan. And the Bible says that he travels from Ur of the Chaldeans to Haran. Haran was about a 600-mile journey. And he comes to Haran, and the Bible says that he settles there. He settled there, and he died there in the place that he settled. I wonder why he settled at Haran. What was it about Haran? Did the journey become too difficult? What was it about Haran that caused Terah to settle in that place? When you study ancient history, you find that Haran was a major metropolitan city. It was a very important trade route. It was a crossroads, and as a result, it became a cultural and economic center. And Terah came to this place, and he settled there, and the Bible indicates that he became very wealthy in that place. I think Terah found a comfortable place, and he settled in that place, and he stopped moving from that place. He forgot about the full picture that God was calling him to go to. He stopped growing, and as a result, he died in the place that he settled. Isn't that our tendency? We find a place that's comfortable. Find a place that's good to our heart. And we settle in that place. And what we don't understand that we're doing is that we're sacrificing our destiny. Terah, I didn't call you to go to Haran. I called you to go to Canaan. Why have you stopped here, son? Why have you stopped growing? Why have you stopped moving? Why? I believe he got comfortable. See, the moment we stop growing, the moment we stop moving, the moment we stop progressing, the moment we stop walking by faith and not by sight, and we come to that place and we settle in that place, is the moment that we write our death certificate. I think it applies to people individually. I think it applies to families. I think it applies to churches. I think it applies to businesses. I think it applies to every area of our life. When we come to the place that we settle in, is the moment that we sacrifice the destiny of God for our lives. Abraham wasn't the initial choice, but he became the choice because he refused to settle. I'm not staying here. This isn't God's best. This isn't what he's called us to. We haven't got there yet. We were called to go through this place, but the place that we were called to go through, we settled in and we sacrificed the place that we're called to, and I'm not doing what my daddy did. Sarah, pack up everything. We're leaving this place. God's called us to go to Canaan. He's called us to leave this place and go to that place because he has promised us something better. I said this a moment ago, but I want you to hear it. You can have comfort or you can have God, but you can't have both. Back this summer, God began stirring in my heart fresh vision for our church. Our church God's blessed us. And we've come to a place that I believe if we're not real careful, we can get comfortable and we can settle here. We have a good impact in this city. We have people engaged in ministry. We got all of the good trappings of a good church. And it's really easy to settle there. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me very clearly this summer. Son, It's time to go where you've never gone. To do what you've never done so that you can reach who you've never reached. I believe our church is standing at the precipice of what Abraham was standing at several thousand years ago. And the call in the Spirit is, it's time to go. It's time to go. It's time to go. It's time to go where you've never gone, to do what you've never done in order to reach who you've never reached. I believe that the future of Christian Life Church is about taking the gospel to our community and the world with ever increasing impact and force. It's about doing everything that we can to reach people with the message of Jesus. It's about doing everything within our power to see the lost saved and the saved discipled and the discipled empowered and the empowered sent so the world will know about Jesus. We must refuse to settle for where we are. We have to go because God has more He wants me to do. He has more He wants you to do. He has more He wants us to do. And people's lives are literally hanging in the balance. Today, across the globe, we are told that there are 2 billion people who don't know Jesus, that don't even have access to the gospel. 2 billion people that don't have access to the gospel. When I was with Gigi and Sheba in India, there's 1.4 billion people on the Indian subcontinent. They were people on top of people. And it's a Hindu country where the gospel is closed. And the vast majority of that 1.4 billion people in India don't have access to the gospel. I refuse to settle for that. In our own community, we are told that 60,000 people in the city of Hoover don't follow Jesus. I refuse to settle for that. I refuse to settle for people not having access to the gospel. I refuse to settle for people not having the opportunity to come to know Jesus and be discipled in the ways of Jesus and empowered in Jesus so they can then go out and do for others what He's done for them. I refuse to settle that this is where we are and this is the best we're going to have it. I thank God for where we are and what He's done. But this isn't the end. I believe what we do for others is what lives beyond us. And I refuse to take my resources, my talent, my time, and my treasure and spend them on myself. No, I want to pour myself out so that others can know the life-giving, transforming power of Jesus. And so today I'm not just launching a new sermon series, I'm launching a new initiative called the Beyond Initiative. I'm launching an initiative that is going to take us beyond where we are towards what I believe is the destiny of God for our church and for our lives. An initiative that is going to accelerate and expand our impact in Birmingham, in the United States, and around the world. Almost every Sunday, we stand before you and ask you to give of your time and to give of your talent to go through CLC Connect and serve. And we're making a significant impact in the community. But today, I'm going to ask you to give. Not just your time and your talent, but also your treasure, so that people can know about the life-giving, transformational power of Jesus. And this is an initiative that the Lord has kind of been stirring in my heart since this past summer about how we could create a giving initiative that could go year after year after year, and enabling us to go further and further and further and refusing to settle for whatever is next. Because if we get to what's next, how many of you guys know that God's got something next after that? And so this initiative has 3 lanes of giving that I want to share with you this morning briefly. And I'm going to ask you to pray, and I'm going to ask you to pledge, and I'm going to ask you to participate. The first lane of giving that will enable us to go beyond where we are towards the next thing that God has for us is in missions. Missions is the heart of the gospel. It is the Great Commission. I told the team before service, this was not a great suggestion, it was the Great Commission. That we have a responsibility as followers of Jesus to take the message of Jesus to the world around us. To go beyond ourselves and to go beyond our abilities and to go beyond our walls as a testimony. He told the early church, go and make disciples. Go and be a witness in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. And this missions giving lane will enable us to support missionaries and special outreach efforts locally, nationally, and internationally. I don't know if you know this or not, but currently our church is supporting 53 missionaries on a monthly basis around the world. And our annual missions commitment to these missionaries is $120,000 that we send out on a monthly basis because we believe people are worth it. Eternity is worth it. And I refuse to allow people not to come to the saving knowledge of Jesus because we don't have money that is supporting missionaries that are a witness for those people in those places. The second thing that this lane allows us to support is special outreach efforts. Locally, nationally, and internationally. The things that we do here in Birmingham, one big party and our serve day and the egg hunt that's coming up right before Easter in another month or so. Our homeless outreach, our angel tree program. I don't know if you realize this or not, but 100 children received Christmas this last year because of Christian Life Church. We served over 1,000 meals to the homeless of our community this last year. We create opportunities for people not just to have fun, but as an evangelistic tool so that they can come to the saving knowledge of Jesus. That's what we do in Birmingham, and God's always expanding the opportunity for us to do those things. But we're also planning this year a church in Knoxville, Tennessee. That there's a pastor right now that's on the ground in Knoxville that's planning to plant a church, working to plant a church in September of this year. And we are significantly getting on board to help him because those Vols need Jesus. I love you, Shan. We are right now supporting orphanages all around the world and making sure that resources are not the reason the children can't come and find shelter and food and the gospel. We are on board right now for a Bible translation project in Africa that I am so excited about. In this particular part of Africa, most of the people there are multilingual, but all the Bibles are in English, which tend to be the second, third, or fourth language that they speak. And a lot gets lost in translation, and so we are partnering with the AG World Missions to translate Bibles into people's heart languages so that they can read it in the language that they most clearly understand. So nothing gets lost in translation. They were telling a story, and I began to weep as they began to weep that the pastors that they were presenting these Bibles to began to read them in their own language, in their native tongue, and they began just to weep. The Great Commission isn't a suggestion. It's a command. We have to go because people are worth it. This is the first giving lane. The second giving lane is projects. What does this lane do? What's the focus of this lane? This lane is focused on special building projects that allow us to strengthen the local church so we can continue to take the gospel to this community and the world with ever increasing force and impact. This lane will enable us to do really two things specifically. It will allow us to continue to pay down our debt, because the more we pay down the debt, the stronger we become and the more we can give. Come on, somebody. But it will also allow us to address special projects that facility improvements, facility expansions, facility reorganizations that allow us to maximize every square inch of our property for the greatest gain for Jesus. The trustees and I have been evaluating a lot of options for the future of our church from a facility standpoint. And we haven't figured it all out yet. But what we did do this January is that we hired an architect to help us evaluate our campus, to figure out what is possible, what can we do here, and is it feasible financially? Because you need to hear me. I know this isn't the end. Oh, come on, somebody. Is this the end? Is this it? Is this what? I refuse to settle that this is God's best. And I'm going to be very transparent with you this morning. I don't know if a relocation is in our future or a complete remodeling of our campus. I just know either way, we haven't arrived yet. And we're doing our due diligence in order to ascertain what God's will is for our future. But I know this, we can't wait to give and to fundraise for the future. When we get to the future, we got to start doing it today. So when God's plans become clear, we can act. Third and final lane of giving is expansion. God is stirring our hearts to go beyond our walls. As I said just a moment ago, 60,000 people. 60,000 people in the city of Hoover alone are far from God in some capacity. And we are exploring every medium and opportunity available to effectively evangelize and disciple our community. We feel like that's going to play itself out in at least two ways. Number one is through the online medium. I don't know if you realize it or not, but we are living in the greatest information and communication revolution since the invention of the Gutenberg press 500 years ago. We are in the digital age, and what the digital age affords us is the opportunity to get outside of our walls and touch people that we would never have the potential to touch. To evangelize and to reach people that may never walk through our doors. God has given us a medium that allows us to go where we've never gone, to do what we've never done, to reach who we've never reached. That medium can be used for evil, but it can equally be used for good. And we're exploring every opportunity available to us to use the digital medium that is before us to more effectively reach people for Jesus. I don't know if you know this or not, but statistically in church world, Right now, today, they say someone visits your church virtually 9 times before they visit it physically the first time. The digital revolution is increasingly becoming the front door for people to know Jesus. And I refuse to allow this opportunity to pass us by because people are worth it. This lane will also allow us to expand not just digitally but physically. I don't believe this is the end. We're exploring opportunities of planning additional campuses in communities where you live. Many of you commute quite a distance to here. And we want to do a better job of taking ministry to you, where it's easier for you to invite friends and family and coworkers and people that you do life day in and day out with, so that we can minister to that community more effectively. And we're looking at that right now. I believe God is assembling our team so that we can do that as we move forward. I just know this: I refuse to settle. I'm not staying here. We're not staying here. God's calling us to go. I'm so thankful for where we are and what He's done. Oh, I could not be more grateful. But this isn't the end. We haven't just arrived. It's time to thrive. It's time to go beyond what we could ask or think or imagine. When you came in, one of the greeters or the ushers handed you one of the Beyond brochures, and what I've talked about this morning is laid out in this, and I encourage you to leaf through it. If you don't have one, there's ones on all of our Next Steps tables all around. We'll have ushers, greeters available with these. Pick one of these up and read through it and allow God to stir your heart, because it's going to require sacrifice for us to go where we've never gone, to do what we've never done. In addition to these brochures, there's some commitment cards. And this is my instruction to you over the course of this next month. I want you to pray about what God would have you give and in what lane He would have you give. What does He stir in your heart that you need to give so that we can go where we've never gone and do what we've never done, so that we can reach the people that we've never reached. I want you to pray, number one, about what God would have you to do and what lane He would have you to give. And then as you pray and He speaks to your heart, I'm going to ask you to fill out one of these pledge cards. And it's very simple. Just fill out the information, your name. And then over to the right side, my right side, your left side of this card, there's the different lanes, and you can check. I will give weekly, monthly, annually, whatever the Lord says for you to give. And then I want you to make that pledge. And you can, if God speaks to you today, you can do it. If He speaks to you tomorrow, you can do it next week. At the back of the sanctuary, there are connect boxes. And as God speaks to you over the course of the next month, I want you to fill out a pledge card and drop it in one of those connect boxes. And then finally, I'm going to ask you to give on March 22nd. On March 22nd, we're going to come, and if God's spoken to your heart, I want you to take a step of faith and give something as a statement of faith. God, You've called me to give this, and I'm going to bring and I'm going to give it as a statement of faith. Over the course of the next year, I'm going to give today whatever the Lord speaks to your heart to give. I believe with everything inside of me, if we will all do what God's calling us to do, we will be enabled to go and to do and to reach. Because people are worth it. People are worth it, church. People are worth it. Eternity is worth it. Everybody is going to spend eternity in one of two places, heaven or hell. And the difference could be you. It could be me. It could be us making the decision. I refuse to stay here. I got to